Alrighty, people are joining. Fantastic. Uh, in classic Convert fashion, we will start 1 minute late, or at least that's how I always start meetings. So we'll just give people some time. It's always fun seeing the participant number increase. It's like this progressive launch. All right, 12:01. Let's get cracking. Alrighty, so another Editions webinar, which is very exciting. Probably one of my favorite times of the year, which says a lot about me, but that's all right. Cool. So lots of content released by Shopify, not as boring as last time, if you got that. So we'll be diving in today. What we're going through today is basically the content of what was shared on the Horizon Editions site, not the Horizon, the Editions.Dev site, as well as some of the content that we saw in Toronto that both Luke and I went to, and Scott was there as well. So lots of insights to share. So to intro myself, if you haven't met me before, my name is Blake. I'm the head of engineering at Convert Digital. I work across all aspects of engineering at our business. My focus is very much on innovation, the type of technology that our clients end up receiving, and working with our engineering team, which is at this point quite large. Scott, I'll hand over to you.
Cheers. Hey team, I'm Scott, Partner Solutions at Shopify. I work across ANZ, helping solution and keeping partners across the latest and greatest with Shopify. Stoked to be here.
And I'm Luke Anderson, the CTO here at Convert Digital. I work very closely with Blake to apply, technology internally to our team, but also our Shopify practice.
Cool. All righty. So there's a lot of updates that were announced that were either new, that we didn't know about, or that were a little bit of a summary looking back on the previous 6 months. We've gone through that list, and this webinar is going to be run a little bit differently to the ones that we've run in the past. So rather than going through each sort of major section, we've called out what we think is the most impactful for merchants and agencies as well, actually, interestingly, because at the end of the day, if we get empowered, so do you. We're going to do a little bit of a demo of Horizon, which will be fun. I think there's a lot of interest in that right now, particularly with a lot of merchants. And we'll be talking about AI because that seems to be a hot topic, or has been for quite a while. But one thing that I do want to put emphasis on is there is a Q&A section at the end of this webinar. From a duration perspective, I'm not expecting to take the entire hour. But if you have questions, please don't be shy. Send them through, and we'll answer them, because I think there's a lot of maybe uncertainty or excitement with everything that's going on, and Shopify is very, very fastly moving in this space. And we want to answer those questions. And ultimately, if you've got a question, someone else probably has it as well, or they mightn't have that question, but they'll answer. They'll benefit from that answer anyway. So start thinking about questions as we go through. So to start off, Sidekick and AI. So this is something that originally, to be transparent, when Sidekick was launched, I was like, that's cool. That's it's like this little chat. This is having a bit of a glow up right now, and is clearly a focus of Shopify. So where we're at with it at this point is, obviously you can chat to it to get more information on your store, but now it's getting to a point where you can start going, okay, well, do an analysis of my customer segments and create a discount for me, which is pretty gnarly. So new features that are available to Sidekick, which I think are really cool, is voice chat. I actually use ChatGPT voice chat all the time, particularly when I'm brainstorming ideas. So the idea of having AI in your store and being able to talk to it specific to your store's data, that's pretty wild. So I think if you're an e-com manager or work in that space, definitely try it out. I think you'll be surprised with the quality of responses considering that everything's contextualized to your store and what comes back. We're also seeing Sidekick pop up in various different places for different types of utilities. So image generation may not be useful to a lot of people, but I'm sure there are some brands that are like, hey, that's kind of cool as well. And I think that kind of plays off the back of even the image editing tool that Shopify launched, I think a couple of editions ago. Scott, I used that recently. You can actually fully edit an image now on Shopify, which is pretty cool. But the really cool thing, which I'd love to touch on, is the roadmap of Sidekick. And obviously we can discuss things that are known, but I wanted to sort of brainstorm a little bit of where this potentially can go. So I think, Scott, getting your opinion on this.
Sure. Yeah, I was the same as you. When I first saw it, I was like, here we go, another chatbot. But it's pretty wild. You can just speak to it in natural language, like, why are my sales down? Or help me build a discount code or a campaign, and it's going to kind of write that email for you. The voice feature is really cool. I think it's great as a merchant to explore your analytics, but it's also really cool as a new user to Shopify, where you'd usually reach out to support or go to the docs to how do I add a product. You can just chat with Sidekick now. It's like you're on a call with someone in the browser, which is really wild. Thinking about the future, like I can see on this slide, the teaser at .dev about app integrations, that's going to be really cool. Still figuring out what that's going to look like and how apps will be able to integrate with Sidekick. But it's clear that it's becoming this command center for growing your store with pretty minimal lift. So it's all about focusing on growing your business, and we take care of the technical stuff.
Yeah, I think the app integrations teaser, so I can't remember if that was from the main keynote where that was sort of mentioned, but there are a lot of Shopify apps and there are clearly sort of leaders in certain spaces, but my vision, I suppose, for it is I would imagine that if you've got something maybe perhaps like Yotpo or something like that, and they've built that integration so Sidekick can communicate with their APIs, or perhaps they've developed their own MCP, which we will touch on as a topic later. But, hey, Sidekick, what is this app doing? What results am I getting from it? Can you configure this app to do this? That idea of not having to open up that app to get information from it or do actions is crazy. Now, obviously, app developers will need to upgrade or integrate with Sidekick. That's just not going to be available by default. But the fact that that was uttered at Editions.Dev, that kind of says, okay, it's pretty clear that Sidekick at this stage, yes, it had an entry point where it was like, hey, it's a chat, but that'll definitely evolve and become more versatile for merchants moving forward. And yeah, app developers will have to step up. So I think we'll see a bit of a separation between, your standard apps and those really, really premium apps that are available on Shopify.
100%. Yeah.
Also, just from a merchant perspective, interacting with Convert Digital, for example, having Sidekick really reduces, I guess, the level of training that we might need to provide to merchants, especially around people who have just gone through a re-platform onto Shopify. So, it can also be used to communicate better with us more effectively. So asking Sidekick to maybe get more example orders if you're having an issue with something or things like that, helping you find that data, Sidekick can do that now. So it's really useful to get some extra information to provide to us as part of a request for new feature or any ongoing bugs or things like that.
Yeah, and even extending that from an account strategy perspective, it's going to get to a point where account coordinators and account managers can go to a store and get the data that they need to help make recommendations for merchants, which is really, really exciting. There's a general AI conversation that I've put in here that I wanted to make note of, because if you see the dialogue that's on LinkedIn, if you spend much time there, I probably spend a little bit too much time there, but there's a lot of opinions being shared about this whole AI thing and what it means for an industry, well, for each industry. And, software is obviously seeing a huge amount of enablement right now. I wanted to chat a little bit about, okay, Shopify is an e-commerce platform or a commerce platform, first and foremost, but it's starting to be recognized as not just an industry leader in e-commerce, but like as a software company, a leader in the AI space. I'm not sure if there's too much of a conversation there, but I wanted to make note of it. Like a lot of the things, particularly around AI software development, like Shopify was one of the first to market with its own MCP. Again, we'll discuss what an MCP is a little bit later, but like it's just interesting to see how different commerce platforms are approaching this and this evolution of change. And yeah, Shopify just seems to be at the forefront every time, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we've got a really technical founder, Toby, and he's quite bullish on AI since its inception. He sent an email around maybe a year or two ago saying like, hey, here are the latest models, here what they can do. You should probably tinker with this. And then a little bit later, maybe a year later, he sent another email saying, actually, we need to be a little more forward with this. AI is now like baseline expectation that we're using it internally and on the product. And you're seeing that reflected in the product. There was actually a really great phrase at our kickoff a couple of weeks ago. Carl, our chief design officer, he said he opened with, everyone's a 7 out of 10 now. And he was referring to everyone is a 7 out of 10 developer if they've got no developing experience. You're a 7 out of 10 at writing marketing emails. AI is giving us all this power and this huge increase in velocity. So I guess as a company, we're trying to infuse it in every piece of the product so that merchants can take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think you'll see some issues as well come from Convert in that space too, for sure. Where Luke and I are already having passionate conversations around what that means. So yeah, it is interesting times, for sure. Cool. So Horizon, this is probably our focus for today. We've got a bunch of other areas, but I wanted to dive into this and spend some time because it is very, very exciting when Shopify says like, hey, here's the new norm. Here's the new standard. This is what, you can expect from our platform. Here's a theme that contains all of our cool new features that we want to put to market. It's important to note that Horizon is basically an amalgamation of features that Shopify has developed independently. It's stitched it all together, and here's the theme that does everything. It is much more complicated than Dawn and Debut, and that's because it is way more enabling for merchants. So, a lot of people are going, okay, cool, I can get the Horizon theme and set it up, and then they get the Horizon theme and they go, oh my God, there's so much work I need to do to make this thing look like my brand. And I can actually break or make something that looks completely terrible with Horizon because there's so much flexibility. So really what I wanted to sort of focus on is like, okay, well, what makes Horizon great? Now, there's a lot of infrastructure changes that Shopify has done from a web performance perspective, and the technologies are being improved. So Liquid, Luke and I were fortunate enough to meet, I think, the director of Liquid storefronts.
Ben?
Yeah, at Editions, and like that guy was the fastest programmer I've ever seen in my life. I could not believe how fast he was writing code.
The AI coding actually got in the way of his typing.
Yeah,
That was pretty funny.
He was quick. But the team there, so Liquid is a templating language, which is what's used to render headed storefronts or Liquid storefronts. And Shopify is investing in and making sure that Liquid gets better. And I think we're seeing the initial benefits of that team working so aggressively on maintaining and further developing Liquid. And I think there's going to be much more that comes further down the line in terms of what developers are empowered to be able to create from an experience perspective for merchants. But the foundation of Horizon ultimately is a thing called Liquid Theme Blocks, which is something that was announced, I think, like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, but it was very, very early days. Horizon is the go-to-market, hey, this technology is now more mature and is ready to be rolled out across an entire store. So how is this going to empower you? and the broader ecosystem, this underlying technology. What you can expect is from both the Horizon theme, which you can install on your store, and agencies alike, is more highly configurable Shopify themes. Now, it's going to be a balance of what you are enabled to do, particularly when working with an agency that has, or any third party that you work with, which has broader strategy, understanding of the vertical that you're operating in, customer experience, your technology stack, etc. All of that still needs to be integrated and planned, but making it so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot as well. From a, how long does it take me to create a page? Do I have to do everything from scratch and drag and drop all of these different things and choose my padding by pixel? I think you'll see that there's a bit of a Horizon theme on tracks, which you can expect from Convert Digital, which is coming very, very soon. It was actually one of the things that I was super stoked about, because Horizon was announced, and I was like, "Oh, fantastic! We're a few months early, which is good." So we saw the writing on the wall with the underlying technology, which is great. Yeah, I think you can expect moving forward, Shopify themes you'll be more enabled to maintain content, which I think is exciting. Which means that ultimately, from a what value am I getting? It's like, okay, cool, I've got a new Shopify theme and I can do more by myself rather than having to go and get bespoke development done, which I think is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think as Blake sort of touched on as well, with that flexibility comes a level of complexity. So we see our agency sort of pivoting more to that strategic, sort of recommendations around how you should implement the theme, rather than sort of blocking it and saying that you can only work this certain way. We want to build themes that are incredibly flexible, but then guide merchants to utilizing them the best way possible.
Very exciting times. Scott, do you want to add to any of that from Shopify's perspective?
The director working on the product, his goal, he runs a really successful clothing store, cotton.com with a K. His goal was to be able to redesign his store. He was previously headless. He wanted to redesign his store using Liquid, and he wanted to be able to just use the theme customizer to drag and drop to get it all of the way without touching code. And he was able to. So like you said, Luke, lots of flexibility, but yeah, also lots of tasks.
Maybe just before you get stuck in as well, Blake, just to go back to what Shopify is doing around the Liquid rendering engine. So there are a lot of things that we heard that the team are working on, and a lot of it comes down to that optimization path as well. So, traditionally, if we want to go and build a really high performing site that scores very well on, the Google Lighthouse metrics, that takes quite a high level of engineering work. Well, the future may look like Shopify takes care of the majority of that. So they're doing a lot of experimentation around code bundling and delivery of the theme to the end browser, where as an agency, we probably in the future may not have to put as many engineering hours against that and just offload that again to the platform. So some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline that specifically for Liquid, which is really good.
Yeah, totally. We're bundling all the styling together, all the CSS together, really getting clever about when we need to load which pieces of data. So if you're on a product page, you obviously don't need to download all of that JavaScript that's doing the carousel on the homepage. And there's the new browser speculation API for preloading. When folks are hovering over links or when they've got intent to go somewhere, we can load that behind the scenes just before they click to make it feel super fast.
It's borrowing from Next.js, that concept. Yeah, it's cool. I think there's, and I won't go into too much detail, but yeah, when we were talking to, it was Chris, right? Is his name Chris, the director of Liquid Storefronts? I think it's Chris.
Ben.
Completely wrong.
Completely wrong. There's a few.
Ben. Yeah. So we were talking to a person, and like there's still things in Liquid which are a little bit restrictive to developers. From like, okay, Shopify is doing all this bundling together if you use the same variables names, which is, I know this is way too Debbie, But that can cause some issues, but they're aware of those problems. And that's why it's exciting for Shopify merchants that are on that Liquid storefront, because it's like, okay, cool. Shopify has recognized that this is a space where they can have a lot of control over and ship product really, really regularly. And it's kind of leaning into that sort of, checkout extensibility. That was a pain to do that migration, but that enabled so much velocity for Shopify in terms of what they can do in checkout. And the new Shopify storefronts, from a Liquid perspective, they're now getting that same sort of attention to detail. And I think, it's only really starting now that Horizon's out there, and we start seeing the broader space start using these block-driven themes. There's just going to be more and more that comes from Shopify. I think with that, that's a good entry point to do a little bit of a demo. Now, I should prefix this. I have not prepared this at all. We're doing this live, and I think Luke, Scott, we can start with. Can you guys see the storefront?
Gotcha.
Yep.
Fantastic. Cool. What I wanted to show first is sort of like what are these blocks? If you're working with Shopify, you may have not had exposure to this if you're working on an older theme. So a Horizon theme that's powered by Liquid blocks looks very similar to a typical Shopify theme. However, you'll notice that there's a few more layers of nesting here. So if I scroll down to this product card, and we're using Coco Black's products on this Convert demo store, which is great, long-time client, which is good. You can see that you can actually have more control over these individual sections. So for the product card, I could say, well, I want my price to render up at the top. And if these products had swatches, they'd render here, or I don't want to show price, for example. Now, obviously, this might be not a real life use case, but you can go in this specific part of the UI and say, I can add quite literally whatever I want. Now, this is the risk that exists with this level of flexibility. In my product card, I could say, yeah, I want an accordion. Now, that could work for you. That could be really bad. Who knows? You can also change, the padding to really make something a complete monstrosity. But this is the level of flexibility that's coming. Fortunately, there is some control that is available to developers to make sure that merchants aren't creating too many issues. So if I go to background, you'll notice that on the right-hand side there, now there's settings that are starting to show. So developers can actually go, okay, cool. If they're using this block or this snippet, for example, we can conditionally render these settings for the merchant in context of what they're doing. So rather than having, and I'm sure a lot of merchants that are on with us right now have a part of their Shopify theme that has this huge scrolling sidebar with a lot of settings and controls. You'll start noticing in these new themes that this gets much smaller, more contextual to what you're actually doing, which is a lot better. In addition to that, if I go to, I think it was up in the header, you'll notice that there's specific blocks that are categorized here. So basic collection and layout. There's this show all button. So these are the blocks that the developer has configured, saying like, hey, these will look really good in this space, and they're categorized for you. So feel free to add them. You do, however, as a merchant, have the ability to go, well, what's under show all? Like, what can I do here? Do I want to put a contact form inside this? Yeah, okay, I can. And again, like, you can start making something that's a little bit wacky. Now, as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's going to be that there is a way you can say specific blocks only for sections. So I think Horizon hasn't got that too much into it, because it's more of a showcase of like, hey, look at this technology that we've developed and built, which anyone can go away and use. What I would expect, particularly if you're a Convert merchant looking at, okay, maybe it's time to do a new build with us. Your experience through this labyrinth of functionality will be a little bit more guided. And we do have control over if I created a new section. So if I go to products carousel, you'll notice that there's been some blocks here that have been pre-populated with sub or nested blocks for you out of the box. this will be guided as well. So, if you want to add a new section, even though these blocks can be composed in whatever way you want, we'll make sure that we put you on the right track so there's less effort. What's really cool is even down to the product page, and we're seeing a lot of merchants on existing themes with us ask for this level of control too, is if we look at the product information section, you'll notice that these are all blocks too. So you can actually have control over your product information section and actually hide or show blocks. And this is also down to, do I want to show an app specific block or a theme block? Do I want to we probably should do some AI stuff here actually too while we're at it. So do I want to show specific things? Do I want to create multiple product templates and have a different layout, for example, and control that by block? So really, really, really cool tech. Convert is actively working on this. So reach out to your account manager or point of contact to Convert to start talking about it. But this is pretty cool. My question to you, Luke and Scott, what do we want to use AI for? What block do we want to make? Any ideas?
If you hit generate, it's going to give you a couple of options. So maybe we choose one of those options there.
Heading with animated glowing effect.
I like the animated glowing effect heading, but I kind of want it upside down and scrolling like a marquee.
It's going to look like my MySpace profile.
Bringing it back.
So upside down product title.
And maybe a configurable subtitle. We want some options for the merchant to be able to pick.
Use lots of emojis. We'll see how we go. So this is interesting, particularly if you're working with us or another agency or a development partner. So what's happening right now is Shopify has received this prompt. Sidekick's going, all right, cool, they want to do a block. It's only available to blocks at the moment, I believe, Scott, or is it available to snippets too?
Yeah, just blocks.
Just blocks at the moment, yeah. So what it'll do is, we were just talking about, okay, Horizons, the foundation is blocks. Those can be used anywhere. This will go and build one of those reusable blocks. Now, this will push code into your theme. So that's a consideration, particularly when working with someone that's potentially got your theme code in a repository somewhere that's maintaining it for you. It's an upside down product title with emojis. That worked.
I think that could have gone better.
So pretty good. So that's a consideration that you've got to work with. Now, you can't create full-blown sections with it. You can't create entire pages with it. It is very much a small piece of code that you can use to extend. One of the things that I'm really, really excited about this for is particularly non-technical users from our side. So working with an account manager and actually using this function, this feature and functionality to be like, all right, cool, what are you thinking? Let's try and get that to a point where it's, okay, we've got a reference for our design team to go away and actually make it look more on brand. And we'll build it out in a way that is not going to potentially cause issues for you later down the line, and then deliver that to you. So
yeah, it's definitely unlocks a level of on-the-fly prototyping with our merchants to sort of test new ideas, how they might appear within the theme before cutting the code and actually and making it a really highly reusable block across the theme. Not to say that the generated code is not bad, but it does have to be taken within the context of the entire code theme base as well.
7 out of 10.
Yeah, it's a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Yeah. And with the underlying engineering sort of concept as well, it's there is the potential for the JavaScript that the AI code block creates and CSS classes to clash with something that already exists in the theme. That's a possibility. So you could see side effects. So existing code actually be impacted, or potentially the code from this block not work as expected. So
yeah, and I just want to also call out, it's not just the visuals that the block has generated, it's fully created all of the configurations you might want for the block on the right hand side, such as show hide emojis, that sort of thing. You also have the ability, if the first attempt wasn't exactly what you wanted, to go up and adjust your prompt to get a more specific outcome as well.
More emojis. Anyway, we'll leave that and maybe come back to it. It depends how fast it does it. We'll see. I don't know how you could have more emojis. I said emojis and it used like 9. Anyway, we'll come back to it. So that was Horizon. I'm expecting some questions around that. If you've got any questions, probably one that I'm anticipating is, how do I get access to that technology in my existing theme, which we can answer. So waiting for someone to answer that question.
Tell us, Blake.
Is it done? No, we're still going. I'm actually very curious to see what that comes back with.
I don't think you're going to see conflicts with the styling here. It looks like it's a pending custom selector, some type of hash, but it's not going to be super performant if lots of blocks are using the same styling, all that stuff.
Yeah. We're writing the schema, which is the last bit of code that gets written. So come on.
Almost as fast as Ben.
More emojis. There it is. More emojis. I like it. Cool. Well, we'll move on to the next section. So markets. So this is obviously a very topical conversation just because of the whole tariffs thing. We're working with a lot of merchants on this question. How do we handle this? What's right for our business? And obviously that's a very merchant-specific conversation. But I think it's really great. And even like tariffs was called out on the Editions website, which I think is great. So Shopify is obviously keeping a pulse on their merchants. They know what's happening around the world. And one of the things that I think is really great is this, multi-entity setup, which Shopify has now got available, which you should definitely reach out to your contact at Shopify to discuss. Basically, what that is if you're on, I believe it's Shopify Plus only, Scott. You're on mute, but you nodded and smiled. So yeah. What that means is, on a markets basis, you can say the entity is this, and payout currency is this, which hopefully should sort of help merchants navigate these times without having to go, yikes, I need to go set up an entire new expansion store.
Yeah, so it definitely, for us, it definitely changes, I guess, the way that we deal with expansion stores versus markets config. It does require a bit more upfront planning and sort of insight into where the merchant wants to go to in terms of like global scale or even national scale. But once it's sort of set up, and I guess the approach being market first rather than just Shopify store first, really will allow merchants to rapidly respond to shifting market conditions, e.g., tariffs and having to spin up things like new shipping and warehouses in other locations, things like that.
Yeah, biggest call out from me from what we're seeing. I'm involved in this conversation with a number of merchants right now with us is, what's your back of house capable of? So, there might be a limitation that your integration with Shopify that's plugging into ERP can only connect to, a Shopify store, or it can connect to multiple Shopify stores, but it can't connect to a single Shopify store that's taking orders in multiple currencies. Like that's kind of where that conversation starts. So if you're talking to us right now, or you're keen to talk to us about this topic, there's kind of like a series of questions which we go through a flow to sort of figure out, okay, well, what's actually possible for you? And like you might already be aware of that, but we'll just confirm that. And then that'll sort of dictate, okay, well, what's the broader strategy? Like there are some merchants which would love to use this strategy, but unfortunately, the back of house systems don't really allow it. So they've had to go down there, okay, we're going to have to handle this with expansion stores, which is totally fine. Like that's not a bad outcome. It's just a different outcome. But yeah, definitely reach out to your contact to Convert or your CSM at Shopify to discuss if this is right for you, like those TV commercials. Cool. Nested markets. This is huge for Australia because we are a huge continent. So what this means is you'll be able to break down existing markets even further. So the anticipation is I've got a market for Australia, Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia and Tasmania are all grouped into one market, and Northern Territory and Queensland are grouped into another. And using the awesome Liquid storefronts that are available with, I think, a feature that was deployed like a year ago, you can say, okay, cool, I want this specific catalog, this specific store content rendered to customers in that market. So if you're selling clothing, for example, you could say, well, it's winter right now, it's really cold, and the southern parts of Australia, show them jackets, all that type of stuff. But if they're in Cairns, maybe they don't want a puffer jacket. So that's really, really, really useful for us. So again, and like you're just seeing Shopify go, okay, Liquid storefronts, that's where we're sort of going. And I would expect, my anticipation is that the degree of personalization is only going to further increase. That's available pretty much out of the box for merchants on Liquid storefronts. Other call out there is customer accounts also now support markets. So we've seen that you've got your legacy accounts, and then you've got customer accounts, which were called new customer accounts, but now they're called customer accounts because they're no longer new. That's getting expanded in terms of its functionality and what's available in that space. And there's a lot more apps as well that are available to customer accounts now compared to even 6 months ago. Anything that Luke or Scott you want to add onto markets?
Again, it's just more that upfront planning. It's much harder to. It's not impossible to retrofit, but it's just more difficult to retrofit if we haven't sort of taken everything into account from the initial market setup. And just to call out as well, it's not just like front end customization. There's also per market have different back end configurations and things like that, different payment methods as well, stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool. Retail. So probably, exciting things announced for retail, but something, we've got extensibility there twice as a heading. Oh, there you go. Something that's been, I wanted to pull this slide up and sort of talk about this because retail is something that Shopify is heavily investing in. And as an engineer, I'm seeing this impact me quite significantly because extensibility is a concept of where a developer can create a simple application that's embedded in either customer accounts, the admin of Shopify, checkout, or in point of sale. Point of sale, admittedly, has been kind of lagging a little bit behind the rest of where you can surface extensions on the Shopify platform. In the last 6 months, retail's really, really caught up. Now, it's still not quite at the same level of customization, but going off the velocity in which that team at Shopify is working at, I'm pretty confident in the next 6 months it'll be on par or even go greater further down the line. But there's some great features that you're seeing that have been deployed universally on Shopify. So split fulfillment, store credit, and then some new things around cash rounding. There are more extension targets, the search improving. You can brand your point of sale a little bit more than you could before. So if you've got point of sale. Shopify point of sale at the moment, good for you. What an exciting time to be alive. You'll see that this is going to be further pushed, which is great. If you're thinking about retail or Shopify point of sale and you're kind of umming and ahhing about it, I would definitely consider it. It's a completely different product than it was 6 or 8 months ago. Scott?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. It's a huge focus for us. A lot of quality of life improvements shipped in the last editions and even the editions before that. But I think you're going to continue to see us push a lot of updates in the next 6-12 months.
I guess from our side, we're definitely looking more into the app development side of point of sale. So really, giving customers experiences in store that don't really translate to online experiences, but also enhancing the abilities for staff members in store to improve the retail experience as well. So I think app development, we're going to see a bit of a gold rush into retail over the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, absolutely. MCP, Scott, you're up.
MCPs, this one gets me going. So this turns AI into your best employees. So now it can do things like sell on your storefront, answer support questions, and even help devs build faster. But a lot of acronyms here, a lot of jargon. So a quick level set. MCP is this newish standard for how applications can provide context to AI models. A great analogy we talked about before the call was it's like a USB-C port plugging in services into your AI models. So an example here is instead of working away in a silo, chatting to GPT without it knowing anything about your store, now you can plug in MCP servers to communicate with other platforms. That could be Shopify, maybe it's your emails, maybe it's Figma. So you can start saying to your AI model, hey, has anyone sent me an email about X? So with all that said, there are two Shopify MCP servers that I want to highlight today. The first one is the Dev Assistant. So your developers can now plug the Shopify.dev docs into their code editor, like maybe Cursor. And when they have a question or ask for code, the model's going to communicate with Shopify's dev docs to make sure the response is up to date and correct. So the developer might say, hey, write a query for me to pull a customer's orders. It's going to head to the docs, figure out the most performant way to do that, and then report back. This one's been out for a while, the Dev Assistant, but the other one we announced a couple of weeks ago at Editions was the Storefront MCP. This one's really exciting. So now you can plug your individual Shopify stores into your agents. So it's like the agent is browsing your products. An example might be, you might ask, hey, do we have any beach towels for sale? But where it gets really exciting here is folks are going to be able to plug this into their chatbot on the storefront. So merchants will be able to surface this little chat window and the customer can say, I'm going to the snow, what'll keep me warm for under $100? So just natural language. It's going to search the catalog and give you those results and make some recommendations. And then it's going to help you build the cart and send you through to checkout. Really cool feature set right now. And there's a great tutorial on the Shopify Dev Docs on how to get this chatbot going with the storefront MCP server. Less of a tutorial, more of a like clone this code and hit go. Really easy to set up, but it's going to become more and more capable. So right now you can request early access for the MCP server to be able to access the customer accounts API. So with that, customers can now say, hey, my order's late, where is it? And it'll say, oh, you're in Sydney, it was shipped 2 days ago, we expect it to take 4 days, you're probably gonna have it tomorrow. So really interesting time for how folks are gonna interact with their stores, but MCP servers, it's making it possible.
I think from my perspective, all of this, the way that I see it is, okay, there's a lot of tasks that everyone's doing right now, particularly when managing an e-commerce store. Like, there's obviously customer success or customer service requests, there's strategy, you might be rolling out a new loyalty campaign, you're working with your agency trying to get some new features out. There's also someone internally that's yelling at you because this target hasn't been met or something like that. Those mundane tasks and that first level of interaction, and you're already seeing this with a lot of chatbots that are available on the Shopify App Store and configurable, like that first layer of hey, where's this? Or I need help for this problem. I think you'll start seeing more relevant or more accurate information come back from those tools for your customers. And then when you think about this in conjunction with Sidekick, I think one of the really exciting roles to have right now is actually to be working on a Shopify website as an e-com manager, because you can now start getting context faster, make better decisions, and have someone cross-check what you're doing. Like when I was saying earlier, I actually have a conversation with ChatGPT about code, and it's like having someone in the office with me talking about it. But they're an expert on the entire system, which is really, really cool. So I think we're at a point in time as well where this technology is still really, really new, and we're only going to see it become more advanced. Like there's this thing called an AI agent now, which is like think of it as a spun up automated person going to do a task. These MCPs will be the things that enable those agents first and foremost, because they're direct plugins. They're the USB ports. So very, very, very exciting times, both from an engineering perspective and also like, okay, operationally, what is happening on my store?
From an agency perspective as well, what this means for our merchants is speed to delivery. So we're utilizing these tools, or starting to utilize these tools to really unlock some efficiencies, both from, empowering our existing developers to, produce more output faster, but also skilling up our developers internally a bit faster as well. More and more, we're also working with merchants that have their own engineering team or their own developers on their side, and it sort of helps us accelerate the boilerplate stuff, so that we can actually talk more about the complex parts of their ecosystem and really spend more time on like making sure that we're building the right ecosystem and things are clipped together properly, rather than worrying about, we've got a huge amount of time dedicated to just theme development. So it is shifting the conversations we're having, and I imagine that will only increase in future as well.
Yeah. And the only thing that I'd add to that is the foundation becomes really significant here. So one of the things that we're being very cautious of from an engineering perspective is like, okay, cool. Like we can expect that there's going to be like some velocity or efficiency considerations. You need to make sure that when you're moving at that pace, that your foundation layer is solid. So what decisions do we need to make and be conscious of for our clients to make sure that what we're putting out is delivered in a timely manner, but also on a really, really solid foundation. So yeah, and I would say the same thing for you as well, using all these AI tools for your Shopify store. Like there's this, I don't know if it's an engineering specific saying, but garbage in, garbage out. If you have your data all over the place and you're not really sure of the outcomes, or like, the convention of what you want to be provided as an output, it's probably going to be not what you want as an output. So you need to really take the time at the front of it and go from there. Cool. Developer tooling. Luke, did you want to talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, I guess there's some really interesting stuff coming up around staging sites. So it's not released yet, but we've always had different strategies and approaches for different merchants on how do we spin up staging sites for things like integrations. But what's coming down the pipeline is, first party support from Shopify on how to do this. But that also includes some really good stuff like content staging and scheduling, and being able to move data between stores really quickly. I think there's a few tools that I've seen which may eat Matrixify's lunch on some stuff, which is interesting, but definitely some really exciting stuff around there to, speed up the development flow as well.
Yeah,
So,
really exciting.
yeah.
Soon with the CLI, you'll be able to be looking at one store, export all the information, swap over, import it to another store. So you're not kind of jumping between 50 browser windows. Also on the staging sites, it seems long overdue, but now you can spin up a developer store at a specific plan. So maybe you spin up a Plus store or an Advanced store, and you're going to get a developer store that looks just like Plus or Advanced. Some really cool stuff coming out there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it all contributes to just making developers happy. It's probably less merchant facing, but happy developers produce better code. So
yeah, for sure. We should probably get into Q&A. One point I didn't want to miss on the developer tooling. We've eliminated tunnels now. So when you're running a dev server, you used to have to spin up a tunnel to sort out the secure certificates. That's all baked into the CLI now. It's kind of one press, and it sets up a local certificate, local host, HTTPS. That one's particularly exciting.
Yeah. Cool. There was one last slide around discounts, B2B flow, and storefront components. We won't touch on that today, unless we have crickets for Q&A. We'll come back to it. But if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We can talk about that.
The one call out I would say is don't sleep on flow. I think it's probably one thing that we need to start thinking flow first for a bunch of things. Really is becoming a very powerful tool within the Shopify automation space.
There's a lot of stuff now you don't need to spin up a custom app because Flow is going to do all that work for you.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Cool. Q&A. Who has questions?
Got one from Sylvan in the chat. Is Sidekick available for front-end users from a browsing perspective, or is it back-end only?
Go ahead.
I mean, Sidekick is in Shopify admin experience. I think like that's the name that Shopify has given to that technology that's in that context. The storefront MCP, which is available for developers to use, that will be more of a third-party app can integrate with Shopify and provide an AI sort of driven experience for the end customer or end users. I would expect, or my expectation is that you're probably going to see a bunch of apps launch that are all competing with each other, clawing for airtime, but then you'll have your mature products that many of you already use take a more time to considered approach to solving that problem and addressing that space and releasing a really, really great product. So if you're using any help desk systems, if they're leaning into Shopify, yeah, I would expect that would be available within the coming months.
Oh, we've got another question here. Does that mean that you would not need to import individual files using Matrixify when updating data from one store to another, but instead can now update it all in one go?
Yes. So the example that was shared at Editions.Dev in Toronto was a simple CLI command, which was basically like pull every product from this store and put it into the staging store. Obviously, Matrixify is still a really, really great product because you can like do a pretty intense filtering, particularly if you're migrating orders. You can be like, orders that are tagged with this from this date to that date, and have all these other considerations. So it's still definitely, I think, relevant. But what's cool is this CLI is going to enable us to go, okay, cool. We have a production environment and a staging environment. We can then use that on a time-based interval to ensure that the products and some of the content files are in sync from the two stores, or at least production's pushing to staging. So you'll see that staging stores, the ongoing time investment that it takes to maintain those environments will be drastically reduced. From an engineering perspective, that's a godsend.
And I think you'll see the primitives expand as well. So right now it's just product catalog, but you'll see product discounts, store settings, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, the demo that we saw with product data, it actually saves the product data to an SQLite database. So there's also a potential for manipulating of that data before loading it back into another Shopify store. So there's some cool stuff that we may be able to do with that. Again, it's hasn't come out yet, so we're sort of waiting to get our hands on it.
Any other questions?
One more question. Is there a possibility that Sidekick can create a block that is similar to an application? For instance, product suggestions on a product block.
I would say that is completely possible, but it would be within a block. So, you need to have a parent section in which that block would be nested in. But yeah, I'd be very surprised given how standardized the recommendations API is on Shopify. Like it would be able to do that.
Yeah, just to expand on it a bit, it's like it can only leverage what's in Shopify. It's not really, it doesn't understand third-party services right now. So if you're trying to integrate a custom third-party recommendation engine into your theme, there's probably some additional work that would need to be done right now. Who knows where MCPs start going, where Shopify might be able to pull that data and actually build something more advanced. That's probably where the direction's going to go. But for now, it's it's very much what's in Shopify. Yeah,
that is a very, very, very good call out. If you're using a third party to do reviews or product recommendations or search or something like that, I would not expect Sidekick to be able to know those systems documentations and build an experience for you.
Another question here. Are there any limits with CLI like Matrixify data volumes, which would require an increased user subscription in Matrixify to update large amounts of data? My view is we just don't know yet. My assumption is because the tool's not released. My assumption would be it's copying staging sites. So I don't imagine there would be a volume blocker on that. It seems like it's something that you should just be able to do within Shopify. It may be something, blocked by store subscription level. Again, we haven't seen exactly how that's going to work from Shopify yet.
Next question is hilarious.
Do you guys want to do a duel?
Yeah, we'll share screen.
Depends what we're coding.
Yeah, who would be a faster coder, Luke or Blake? I don't know.
I think if we had to spin up an integration, but a backend integration with Shopify, I probably would be faster. But I think from like an application front end layer and also just poking around the Shopify ecosystem, Blake would definitely be faster than me on that.
We'll find out on Friday.
That's right. We've got we're doing an internal hackathon on Friday, and we'll see. We'll record something at least.
Yeah.
So good. One question here. How will MCP work with Gorgeous Chatbot? So I guess they could leverage the MCP server and plug it into their own app. And then when you ask it questions about your catalog, it knows where to go.
Obviously, that's up to Gorgeous to implement, though, right? So this is that,
100%.
we've got to wait and see. These mature players already in these spaces need to evaluate what Shopify is pushing out into the ecosystem. And obviously, Shopify puts a lot out into the ecosystem. So they need to evaluate and go, yes, that's something we want to do and provide it. Any other questions?
No, I think we've cleared them.
I'm going to give that one person another 15 seconds to type, because there's always one that's a little bit, I need to ask that question. We'll see how we go. All right, cool. Well, we've got 3 minutes left. I think that's probably good to call it there. I have no more questions for now. Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully that was insightful. Again, any questions on what we've covered today, please reach out to your contact at Convert or Shopify. It's exciting times ahead.
Sorry to jump in. There was actually one additional question that was asked before the webinar kicked off, which was, what are your predictions on LLM models impacting how people search? Any insights on how this impacts website search or UX designs in future?
I think the big one is the natural language. Instead of searching for black waterproof jacket, you're searching for something to keep me warm in the snow under $100. UX concerns, I guess you're going to need some structured data back because you're not really sure what the input is. Interesting space. You guys?
Yeah, I think from a UX perspective, like any new technology, it kind of breaks the barrier between human and computer interactions. Example is the leap from punch cards to tablet devices that you can talk to in with your voice. I think we're going to start seeing, more agentic behavior where things that are interacting with, say, your e-commerce platform are not actually the customer themselves. It's like an agent acting on behalf of the customer. So we're probably going to see maybe some slight changes to UX because of that behavior. How it impacts search as well, like as Scott said, there's the natural language searching, which is really more around asking something to personalize something for you on the fly. But we are also going to see a change to how we do optimization for search and how do we get that structured data in a way that AI agents can consume it to be more effective and things like that. Yeah. It's already happening on a broad scale. So.
Only thing that I would say is where there needs to be serious criticism or analyzing of the data that's coming back from how consumers are interacting with websites. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot on LinkedIn right now is everyone's talking about customers going to GPT to find products and voice searching and all that type of stuff. Algolia as a search provider has had voice search for e-commerce for years. Now, obviously, it may have not been as good as what's available today, but I would advise caution to merchants of being distracted by a lot of what's happening here when a lot of consumers are not behaving in the way that everyone on LinkedIn saying that they will. Now, obviously, we've got a new generation of consumers with Gen Z coming up. Like, yes, they're interacting with the internet differently, but it's like it's kind of like the iPhone when it first launched. There's going to be a slow adoption to that new type of technology. So it's something to be considering, and maybe have thoughts about how your brand's going to approach that change in customer experience. But I definitely wouldn't go, I need to have voice to text search on my website, or I'm stressing about my recommendations popping up in GPT, because it's like, how many customers are really doing that? Like, I know for a fact that my mum and my fiance don't use GPT at all. So, and they buy a lot of stuff from the internet. In fact, I think half of the stores we work with that convert, they both pop up. So, I'd just be considerate of that. Like, don't get too distracted by those things. Be aware of them and what's happening, and keep a pulse on what's going on, but don't go down, that path too early, I would say. Look at your data. Anyway, there's one more question that's come through, and I think we should answer it. Would the ML perhaps ask the customer to rate the response, then send back to Shopify to update the next time the question is asked? Yeah, I mean, I would expect that depending on what's powering the backend system, to be aware of historical conversations. And I would also expect, like, if I was to build it, I would have a log of these questions were asked. You could type in a manual response to those questions, and that feeds the LLM, so you can actually start guiding the responses a little bit on tracks, so it would learn. Otherwise, it's not a very good product. All right, well, we will leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. As I said, any questions, reach out to us or Shopify. Hopefully that was insightful, and we will see you next time.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day. See ya.
Bye.